Welcome to our Yurtiful Life podcast. In today's episode, we will be discussing fencing and the importance of doing it right.
Hey there, Yurties!
Thanks for joining us today. For anyone new here, I'm Keegan.
And I'm Sarah. We've been living a minimal off-grid lifestyle for over 10 years now.
We have a large family and lots of experiences to share.
So let's get to it. Welcome to
Our Yurtiful Life.
So today we're going to be delving into the topic of fencing. And while this may not be the most exciting topic, it is a very important topic when it comes to homesteading and keeping animals.
So fencing really goes hand in hand with animals. If you're going to be raising animals, you will need fencing of one type or another. Possibly you might free range some of your animals, particularly chickens, and you can have some good success with that if you have a lot of acreage of land.
But then you'll need to be fencing your garden.
Right. So really you're going to be fencing something. And usually it comes down to fencing the animals in. It doesn't mean the animals aren't able to have a good free life. That's really dependent on how much space you provide them. But fencing is good. It provides safety to the animals and it gives proper boundaries to be able to structure your homestead and your land usage.
So that being said, today we are not going to be talking about the amount of fencing you need or calculating that. There are great calculators online that you can use to do that. Also, we're not going to be talking about the amount of spacing per animal. There are a lot of great resources available to do that online and calculating how much space per head of animal you really should have. Today, we're going to focus mostly on the types of fencing available, fence posts and tools for using fencing, and then just a few points on why it's so important to do it right. So that being said, let's get into this and delve into the fascinating topic of fencing.
So we're speaking mostly just from our own experiences. We do not know everything. We're not experts in this. We're not necessarily skilled in putting up acres and acres and acres of fencing. We're more so skilled in really hilly, rocky areas, forested areas, and having to make fencing for those areas that'll hold in goats and sheep and chickens and that kind of thing. It's mostly donkey. That's mostly where our experience lies. So that's where we'll be speaking from today, is from our past experience.
However, we also have put up fencing for cows in the past, worked on some pastures, work with that, and we do have some other experience that we have gained and wisdom and insight from other homesteads we've talked to. So we will just share the knowledge we have, and hopefully this will give you a leg up and a step ahead as you begin your own Yurtiful homestead.
So first off, the types of fencing. This is really going to depend on the animals that you are trying to raise. One of the big questions I would bring up first is welded wire versus woven wire fencing.
So there's a lot of back and forth between these. Woven wire is very well made and it's very strong and sturdy. But welded wire has come a long ways and improved a lot over the years. And we have actually generally used a majority of 2x4 welded wire in our own personal use. And as long as it is stretched properly and installed correctly, this is actually a very sturdy fencing, and it has kept all of our goats and sheep in, our donkey, our livestock guardian dogs, with just a simple 4-foot 2x4 welded wire. So that works well for us. We've also used woven field fencing, and we do actually have part of our extended pasture is woven field fencing, which does work well. But we do tend to gravitate to the 2x4 welded because it is more cost effective in our area, and it can also keep ducks and chickens in as well as larger livestock. So it's for us a more all-around purpose type of fencing.
And for those who don't know, when she refers to 2x4 or 4x4, it's referring to the size of the squares that the wire makes in the fencing. So 2-inch by 4-inch are the sizes of the squares versus 4-inch by 4-inch. We prefer 2-inch by 4-inch, one, because it seems to be more universal. It's good for keeping those smaller animals in. as well as the bigger animals. And two, it also is cheaper. It tends to be cheaper per roll for the amount of feet you're getting compared to the same sized woven wire fencing.
So that being said, they woven wire is a technically a higher quality because the strands are woven together and thus they're not all just welded with little tack points. But you can find good quality welded wire and you can find poor quality woven wire. So you really just need to look at what you have available and what might work best for you. Now, different sizes and types of wire that are common on homesteads. Again, the 2x4 welded wire is a big one or woven. 4x4 fencing, that's more for sheep and goats, not good for chickens, ducks, and things of that nature. You have field fencing, which is good for larger livestock, but does not keep smaller poultry in very well.
It's one of your cheaper, even cheaper than 2x4. Sometimes field fencing. My big problem with that is the field fencing is smaller at the bottom and larger near the top, but goats will invariably always stick their head through the center to top portions to eat something through and then get stuck. If they have horns, they get their head stuck. It's a lot more issues with them getting stuck in field fencing or pushing their way through and struggling through and even getting through sometimes if they're small enough. Compared to 2 inch by 4 inch, they almost never do that.
Other types of fencing you're going to find on a farm or homestead for availability are chicken wire, which again, there's different sizes. There's 1 inch, 1.5, 2 inch chicken wire. Again, this is going to depend on your usage and where the predators you have in your area, and maybe if while chicken wire is a good lightweight and less expensive option, if you have strong predators, you may not want to go with the chicken wire for your fencing. You might choose a 2x4 or a hardwire, even fencing. Um, Hardwire cloth or hardware cloth is another type of fencing that you might find where you have very tiny squares, and this can be often used with rabbits or chicken coops, and there's lots of different uses for all of these different types of fencing. So, really, it comes down to what exactly are you trying to keep in? What are you trying to keep out? And what does your budget allow?
And a little tip here, chicken wire is, since it's such a light duty flexible wire, we've had good success with using it to make like a liner on the bottom of heavier fencing, like 2 inch by 4 inch. So you have your 4 foot high 2 inch by 4 inch, and we'll take strips of chicken wire and put it on the bottom first foot or so high. If we're having issues with like chicks can easily escape and get through the 2 inch by 4 inch squares, but then the mama can't follow them. So you have chicks out everywhere, and the mama's freaking out because she can't get to them. So a solution is to put down some chicken wire along the bottom. Well, now the chicks can't get out, and the mama's happy. But you still have the strength of that 2 inch by 4 inch to keep dogs out of the chicken pen.
All right, so let's touch briefly on electric fencing. Now, I have a love hate relationship with electric fencing, mostly from getting shocked one too many times growing up on
If
a
you know,
farm.
you know.
Horse fencing and cow fencing is very strong. But electric fencing, there are three major types that we're going to discuss real quick. You have netting fencing, you have tape, and you have strand. So, netting fencing, most people think Premier One. There are a lot of other brands out there. This can be used for poultry, it can be used for sheep, goats, pigs. A lot of different animals can be trained to electric netting fencing, and it's a very popular option for people, especially who are going to be doing portable fencing and moving pastures. The next is electric tape fencing. This is often used with larger livestock where you're going to be portably moving the fencing. And sometimes if you have a pasture in place, you would want to use a electric tape so it's highly visible and the animals can see it, people can see it more easily, and that would be more the reason for electric tape. We used electric tape when we lived in Missouri with our donkeys. That was a very good option for us with the keeping our large donkeys in.
And you can get in and out of it easy yourself. You just go to the tape where they can't duck like that.
The next type is electric strand, and this can be used. You can use one strand of hot wire. You can do multiple strands. If you have critters that are pushing under your fence, you could do a lower bar strand. A lot of times, pigs, this is done to keep pigs in. And for us right now, we have a hot strand around the top of our fence, which discouraged those goats that were stretching their necks up, or even the dogs, just training them to stay off the top of the fence. Just putting one hot strand around the very, very top helps also with predators, keeping predators out in our area.
Yeah, and that really that made it balanced enough for the acreage that we can run it off of a small little solar powered battery charger, not have to have it plugged in on the grid.
So those are the different types of electric fencing. And again, they're going to be varying costs. A lot of that has to do with the quality that you are getting, but also just looking at the different types and what critters are you going to be using this for, then do you need electric or not? We're going to also just touch very briefly another type of fencing that we really don't like and have minimal experience with is barbed wire. Um, I have a lot of experience from growing up and old barbed wire fences that have fallen, and you come across them in the woods all the time. But on using barbed wire for our own animals, we have chosen not to do that because it is very aggressive and it can cause a lot of damage. And so, while it can be used wisely, we just haven't much
Yeah,
experience
we
in
haven't
that.
found a necessity. It doesn't necessarily do anything better than what we've already found. That doesn't require the barbing. Between electric and welded wire fencing, you can do a lot.
So, for beginner fencing, you're starting out, you're planning your homestead, you've decided the types of animals you want to get into. What is the best fencing for you? Well, it really depends on what you can afford, what will work with your budget, and looking to see what options out there. Now, when looking to buy fencing, of course, you can probably find a local Tractor Supply, Lowe's, Home Depot, or some other major supplier out there nearby that you can buy a lot of brand new fencing and items from. But there's also some other options. You have the option of trying to buy seconds from a factory, or sometimes Amish will sell seconds, or people who have connections might be able to get you seconds. And so these are the byproduct that didn't quite make the cut. And maybe there's some broken wires, some broken welds,
But
but
usually still new and that haven't been used yet.
so that can be a good option if you can find a good quality seconds. And if you are okay with mending some fencing, maybe cutting out a section where it got damaged in the manufacturing process and just splicing it in, then buying seconds would be a great
You
option.
can sometimes save a good amount. Back in Missouri, we found a good supplier of seconds on 2 inch by 4 inch welded wire. We were paying half the price you would pay for the same stuff in the local stores.
And for us, that was worth it.
Yep.
Um, Another option is buying secondhand from a local farmer. Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace is a big thing. There is a caution I would want to give with this, though, that you just you need to really check the fencing before and never commit to it right off, especially if it's something where you have to take down the fencing and transport it yourself and do all of that labor. Make sure you're counting the time it takes you to do that when you're or estimate that time into the cost, because sometimes when you think you're getting a really good deal, you then go and you put in all this time and effort, and if you were paying yourself even minimum wage, you really just shot yourself in the foot. You should have just gone bought it brand new from
Right.
Tractor
We
Supply
have
and
all
would
the
have
trouble.
saved yourself money and a
How
lot
do
of
we know that?
headache.
No.
We may know because we know.
There's a reason why people say you can get it for free if you do the work, take it down because it's saving them money. So really, unless you're just truly, it's a great deal and you know you can just get that out of there, or it's like almost brand new fencing, then okay, there's a deal there. But almost always, I'm gonna say just let it pass. Look for something different. And also be really careful, like she said, when you do buy secondhand fencing. If it's already rusting and already corroding, it's going to be such a pain to take down, or even try to, if they've already taken it down, to try to set it back up. You're going to have to do so much mending. It's going to cost you 2 to 3 times as much time to set it up than it would be a new roll.
Also, you do need to be careful of the health aspect. If it is rusty wires and things you're dealing with, very sharp, you don't know the cuts, that could also put you at risk. So just be careful with that.
Yep. So secondhand fencing, buying it when it's already been used. Make sure you really know what you're looking into, and if it's really going to be worth it to you. Seconds, as in buying seconds, like factory seconds fencing, that can be a really good deal, depending on why it's a factory second.
And when you're buying brand new, do remember you don't have to go with name brand all the time. Sometimes the non-name brands are give the name brand a run for their money, but at a fraction of the price. So look at what your options are. You don't have to buy red line fencing just because it's the well known, but sometimes the non name brand that your store offers might be just as good or
Good
close
enough.
enough to get you there at a fraction of the price.
Yep. So enough about fencing. Let's now talk about fence posts. If you're going to put fencing up, you're going to have something to attach them to.
And when this comes, the height does matter. You need to know the height of the fencing you're going to be using. For us personally, we have found that 4 foot high fencing is a good multi purpose fencing. It is a good standard to use. Now, depending on the animals, you might be able to get away with a little bit lower, or you might need a little bit higher. But for our purposes, we've always found 4 foot to be a good, decent height to work with.
So since we're installing 4 foot high, 2 inch by 4 inch welded wire fencing, we tend to get T posts that are around 6 feet long, 5.5, I think, minimum. Usually 6 feet. You can get longer. We've not found much need to go longer than 6 foot, which keeps the T posts fairly affordable. The longer you go, obviously, the more metal you're paying for. It costs more for every 5 T posts. So those can really add up quickly when you're installing a lot of fencing. So you want to save all those dollars.
So, part of the height equation, you're going to want to look at number one, where is your frost line? If you are in the north and you have a deeper frost line, you're going to want your T post fencing to go deeper than if you are in the south and you have a very low frost line or a very
Shallow.
shallow frost line. So that is one thing to take into consideration. So when we say we have 4 foot fencing and we have 6 foot T posts, those T posts are going 1.5 to 2 feet into the ground and then connecting to the 4 foot. We leave about 1.5 inches or so on the top above the 4 feet, and that is a space for a wire insulator for our hotline to go on the very top. So for us, that's how we calculated 6 feet. We do about
Technically, the frost layer can go down 2 to 3 feet down into the ground up here. But also, we have a lot of rock to deal with. So it's kind of a miracle if you make it 2 feet in the ground and don't hit a rock. So if you're trying to go even deeper, you're most likely not going to get that much deeper.
So that's where fence post height matters. Now, there are a lot of different types of fence posts you can use. You can do cedar fence posts, and there's pros and cons to cedar. I grew up on a homestead where all we did was cedar posts, and I loved it. They were great, and they still, to this day, 90% of those posts 20 years later are still standing. Um, so that is an option. They do seem to last a very long time if they're put in correctly. Then you have T-post option, which that is what we have chosen to do the majority of on our homestead. And for us, it's because it is easy and it is technically removable and portable. And so we have, as you all know, moved several times, and it has just been beneficial to be able to pull things up when we go and need to.
Fencing's costly. If you can take it with you, it's a good thing.
So T posts are an option, or U posts, or other metal posting. Then you have stakes. Staking would be mostly if you're doing electric fencing. Stakes are a good option for that. If you're doing a netting, tape, or strand and you're only doing electric, then stakes are the way to go. By stakes, I mean generally you use fiberglass rods. You could use metal stakes and attach the insulator to the stake, but that is an option. And then you also have trees as an option. And if you're doing a very heavily wooded area, take advantage of as many trees as you can if that's something you desire.
Yep. The one negative, possibly long term with trees, is if it's a live tree, it's still growing, it's going to start pulling your fencing up over the years. But again, that's a long term struggle, and that really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I know some guys will purposely try to use trees for corners because corners are usually one of your most heavier, harder to keep tension on your corners. It takes a lot of tension, so a good rooted tree might be the option. And so they may lop off the top of the tree, purposely kill the tree so it's a stump that's left. It doesn't grow and continue to lift their corner, but yet they still have a strong tree for years on that corner.
That leads us into the tools for putting up fencing. Now, there are lots of gadgets out there. There's a lot of sell it as this is the thing that will make fencing work.
Yeah.
And we have never had, um, yeah, we've never been in the place to get those things and to do it. So, Keegan actually created a DIY fence stretcher. And why don't you explain real quick what you used when we're stretching our fence?
So this works well. Again, we've mostly worked with 2 inch by 4 inch welded wire, 4 foot high. But I found the most basic and very mobile system is two ratchet straps, or three if you prefer, but at least two, and then a piece of rebar that is at least 4 feet long, or even two fiberglass rods that are each around 2 feet long would work. Then all you do is I can't stretch long sections, so I do every 2 to 3 posts. I will weave the rebar or the fiberglass rods, whatever it is I'm working with, into one column, if you will, of the wire fencing, and then I will hook the ratchet strap, one at the near the top area, and then the other one near the bottom area, kind of equal proportion to each other, and then wrap the other end of the ratchet straps to a tree or something that's very well anchored to the ground. I can stretch off if that's not going to move.
Sometimes that's a T post that has been braced
Right.
with a
If I
second
if
T
I have no
post,
trees,
or
preferably a tree, but if no trees in the area, then another T post that I've braced something, or even a vehicle if I have to. But then I will just keep going back and forth and equally tightening the ratchet straps back and forth with each other, and that stretches my fencing. That makes it nice and tight. And then as it's nice and taut is when I then clip it to my T post as it still has tension on it. And once it's clipped to the T-post, then I release the tension on the ratchet straps. It works. It's very highly mobile. It doesn't take a bunch of heavy things and doesn't require vehicles. You can carry it all in by hand. So I found the system over the years to work really well for me. Two ratchet straps and a rod, and use that.
so other tools for putting up fencing would be a post pounder if you want to do that. Those are very handy with putting in T posts.
I highly recommend it. I would not just use a sledge. The few times I've used a sledgehammer, invariably something flies off into my eye. So T-post will protect your eyes, but also it makes it a lot faster, and you have a lot more control with a T-post pounder.
So we highly recommend a post pounder if you are doing that with T posts. Now there are hydraulic post pounders if you're or post drivers if you're doing other fencing. Cedar posts can sometimes find hydraulic drivers for that. Again, we have never used any of that equipment, so we can't talk at length for those things, but we do have our trusty T post pounder, which works very well and has not done us wrong. And don't forget the other tools or costs with coming to fencing. Things if you're doing wire fencing, staples, and a hammer. If you're going to be using cedar posts or trees, you need to have staples and a hammer to install those. If you're using T posts, you need to have T post clips. And a clip tool is extremely handy. It's very simple. You can use a screwdriver or something else, but a T post tool makes the job so much faster and more efficient. If
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That was one of the best things I probably ever bought early on in my fencing career, if you will. Putting up fence for animals is that one tool. There's probably different names it goes by, different name brands out there, but it's just a simple tool with one hinge point in it and a hole at the end of the rod, and allows you to do both. It allows you just to with the clips to be able to insert it into the hole, and then it gives you a little leverage point, and you can easily twist the clips very quickly with just one tool.
If you're doing electric fence, do not forget that you need to have insulators. And if you are doing insulators into cedar posts or trees, it's different than if you're doing insulators on T-posts. And those differ if you're doing insulators for um, rods or stakes. So you need to know, again, what type of fencing you're using and the type of insulator or connecting point you need to your posts. Then, if you're doing electric fencing, you need to think about the options of how you're going to power that fencing. Are you going to do solar with a solar panel and internal battery? Are you going to have a portable battery system? Um, my dad ran a portable battery system for our electric netting fencing for many years, and he rigged it out of a battery in a bucket and insulated it properly so that he could just carry the bucket around as we moved the fencing. That's an option. Or do you want to have a plug into your normal line power charger? And that's another good option for electric fence. But again, you have to think about where is the power coming from to charge your electric fence? How are you going to charge it and keep it going? And the last real tool that you should think about is corner clips and braces. If you're doing T-posts, it is important to make sure the corners are properly braced or they will sag and be a weak point over time. Also, if you're doing cedar posts or trees as a corner, you need to know what you have for your corners of fencing and make sure you have the correct equipment and bracing to properly make a strong corner because strong corners are very important.
Yes, good fencing has to be tensioned fencing. Doesn't matter what kind of fencing you're putting up, I would argue. If you don't tension the fencing, if you're just thinking you're going to just pull it, unroll it by hand, and clip it, you're going to have a very saggy, loose, floppy fence. You must be able to tension your fence. And with all that tensioning means the corners are taking a lot of abuse because they're getting tension in two different directions, fighting against that corner from standing straight. You talk to anybody who's put up fencing, there are multiple different techniques depending on the type of fencing of how to make a good corner. And corners, I think, are one of the most important parts of a good fence, honestly.
And
Um, and so, if you're going to be doing T posts, I highly recommend those bags of corner reinforcements, and you should be in your math calculations 3 to 5 T posts per corner is what you're going to use, not just one in the corner. A minimum of 3 T posts for your corners.
so, really, what it comes down to is there is great importance with fencing. It seems like a quick topic to some degree, but you really need to think about and spend some time focusing on your fencing. There are different strategies regarding depending on the type of animal you are choosing and the cost, the budget you have. So really take all of these things into consideration. And the most important thing, though, is doing it correctly. It will save you a lot of time in the long run. It will be more difficult to install it correctly. Like Keegan said, the corner posts, it's easier to put one T post up and say, that's good. But really taking the time and the extra expense to do the corner properly with 3 to 5 bracing posts really is worth it in the long run. It's going to give you a much longer lasting fence, a much stronger fence. But you know where you're at. You know your budget and time and allowance. So you need to do your own research, take these as thinking tips, talking points, and the biggest importance and takeaway is figure out the right way to do it for you that'll work for you and your animals in your homestead and invest the most you can into good fencing.
My tip on the time and doing it right the first time, if you don't take as much time before the animals are on your land and you're putting up fencing, then that, in my estimation, it means you're going to be taking time to catch animals that are getting out. And so you'd rather take the time now, even if it takes you 3 times longer to put the fencing up, but to do it nicely, to have it under good tension, to make good corners, so that once the animals are in it, they're in it. That's it. It's peaceful, and there's very few breakouts unless there's some storm or something. It's not like they're getting out all the time or finding weak points, and you constantly have to reinforce your fence and go catch the animals on the loose. So really, it saves you time to take extra time up front and to get it done right the first time.
Do the work now, save yourself work later.
Yep.
Well, it's about time to wrap this up.
So please like, share, subscribe, and join our email list.
And don't forget, go out,
dream big,
and discover your own Yurtiful life.